On Talking with Dr. Donna, we focus on 4 pillars of health to help build a generational health network to end the cycle of premature death in the Black community. I created Talking with Dr. Donna as a way to educate as many people as possible and give accurate information from a trusted physician. Go to Talking with Dr. Donna and get accurate information. And then share that information with your family and friends. And if you like what you see, like my channel and subscribe. Remember, every Thursday, keep your appointment with Dr. Donna. Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking with Dr. Donna. Thank you so much for keeping your appointment. Remember, you have an appointment every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. with the doctor. Our show is about building generational health. We are a network, and our mission is to end premature deaths in the Black communities here in America and across the diaspora. We have 4 pillars of health that we focus in on. We focus on emotional and mental health. We focus on spiritual health. We focus on physical health, and we focus on environmental health. Because I firmly believe that if we focus on these 4 pillars, starting with our babies all the way up through to great-great-great-grandma who is still alive, as long as we focus on these 4 pillars of health, we are going to end the cycle of premature death in the Black community. And if you're not aware that Blacks die of almost every single disease more often and earlier than any other race, choose a disease, say it out of your mouth, and I can bet that there is a disparity where African Americans are dying more than any other race or ethnic group for that particular disease. So that's what we're about here on Talking with Dr. Donna, is building generational health in our community. So thank you for tuning in. And if this is your first time joining, welcome. I would love it if by the end of this show, if you learned anything, that your appreciation and gratitude can be to just go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and then hit that bell icon so that you get notified every time we go live. And I would say we go live every Thursday at 6:30, but tonight is our final episode of season 3. Yay! So we have been diligently here on Thursdays since September, and our season ends at the end of May. We take a couple of months off to regroup and get ready for the next season. So I want to thank each and every one of you who have been watching us through season 3, and I look forward to seeing you at season 4. So just because, though, we're not here on Talking with Dr. Donna doesn't mean that we're not going to stay engaged during the summer. We will continue to have our health tip of the week. We'll continue to show that on my pages. So continue to stay aware and keep in touch with us during our break in between our season, okay? Again, you can follow me. You can see how you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. And you can always go to my website, mydrdonna.com. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are joining in with so many other organizations to help break the stigma of mental health. Unwellness is what I call it, being unwell in our mental health space. And we want to encourage you that if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling depressed, that you treat that just like you would treat any other disease. If you have an issue with your heart, or you have high blood pressure, or you have diabetes, you seek help from a professional, right? So if you have something going on with your mental health, I want to encourage you to seek professional help, because there should be no stigma around taking care of what is arguably the most important organ in your body, that is your mind. And your mind and your body are together, right? They are connected. And if you mentally are unwell, that is going to translate into you also being physically unwell. Studies have shown that if you have significant mental illness, that you are at increased risk of having a chronic disease like heart disease or diabetes. So it's important to take care of this organ to help take care of the rest of your physical organs. What you're seeing now on screen is a way for you to go online and actually kind of assess your mental health and see if there is any places in which you can do better at. I know most of us can probably do better at self-care, relaxing, taking time to just breathe and moments for ourselves. But go on this site here, check it out for yourself, get a sense of where your mental wellness is. And then at the end of the episode today, we're going to give you some resources to help you de-stress. And also some resources if you're looking and seeking a therapist. All right. So let's get into our show tonight. Last week we talked about state of emergency, and we talked about homicides. We talked about our COVID state of emergency, and we also talked about human trafficking and sex trafficking. Tonight is really a continuation of that call out of being in a state of emergency. So I'm really excited that we have two fantastic ladies here today to talk about this. They're experts in this area, so I thought it was important that we bring on some experts to talk about this so we can see what we can do, right? We're going to tell you about the issue and the problem, but more importantly, we're going to give you some strategies and things that you can do to help with this issue. So my first guest I'm bringing on is Vanessa Russell. Vanessa, in 2010, she was a dance instructor, and in 2010, one of her 15-year-old dance students was sold into human trafficking. So this is a personal connection for her. And although the adolescent, thankfully, was eventually located and is now being restored, Vanessa encountered many others like her students who were U.S.-born women and men and children trapped in modern-day slavery. So her response was to launch Love Never Fails. It's a nonprofit dedicated to restoring, educating, and protecting those involved or at risk of becoming involved in domestic human trafficking. Vanessa graduated from the University of San Francisco with a Bachelor's of Science in Information Systems Management and is enrolled to be in a Master's and Doctorate of Psychology program. So let's bring on future Dr. Vanessa Russell. Thank you, Vanessa. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. All right. Our next guest is Tiffany Chaplin. Tiffany is a deputy district attorney, has been with the district attorney's office, and has been a prosecutor for over 25 years. She was working in the Juvenile Justice Center in Alameda County for a number of years and was the lead prosecutor in the girls' court, where she worked collaboratively with defense attorneys, probation officers, and advocates to determine the outcomes of our at-risk youth who were involved in the juvenile delinquency system. Now, Tiffany has been promoted, and she is the deputy district attorney and is the head of the juvenile branch for Alameda County. Tiffany received her bachelor's degree from Mills College here in Oakland. I know some of you are like, Mills College? We know. Unfortunately, that cornerstone is no longer there, but it educated our deputy district attorney, Tiffany, and she received her Juris Doctorate degree in law at Santa Clara University. So let's bring on Deputy District Attorney Tiffany Chaplin. Hi, Tiffany. I think you might be on mute, Tiffany.
Thank you.
All right, yes.
Thank you for
Hi.
having me.
Thanks for being here. All right, so I kind of read a little bit of your bios, but I would love if we can just start out with Vanessa telling us a little bit about your a little bit more about your organization and what it is that you do.
Sure. So, Love Never Fails has been in place for the last 12 years. As was mentioned, we started under some really difficult circumstances. One of my 15-year-old dance students was exploited in the Bay, in Oakland, Vallejo, Richmond, Hayward. And, that really opened my eyes to the issue of human trafficking. And we were a grassroots organization for the first 4 years, doing a bunch of outreach, education in the schools, at community events, fairs, and whatnot. And then as we were doing outreach, we realized that people kept saying, if you just had a house, I would get off the streets. And so we opened up our first home 8 years ago, and we have housed almost 250 plus, actually 250 plus individuals, including women and children. And now we're housing men that are homeless or previously incarcerated or labor trafficking victims, as well as the women who are sex trafficking victims, labor trafficking, and their children. And we also have a home for girls ages 13 to 17, which is a foster care diversion program. And then we don't stop there. We also provide them with IT training. So we want to make sure that people don't just have a place to live, but they have economic sustainability. And then lastly, we do a bunch of the things that we've been doing since day one, which is outreach, prevention, education, and helping people find their missing loved ones. So that kind of describes what we're doing, and so grateful to be here with you today, Dr. Donna.
That's awesome. I think that is so amazing. I love the fact that um, so many organizations kind of do their own thing, and you are directly and responsive to what people needed. So thank you so much for being in our community and helping out these young girls. And do you do young girls and boys, or is it mostly just girls?
Yeah, so we offer our IT Academy to girls, boys, and gender nonconforming people. Doesn't matter. We'll offer it 16 and up. Our housing programs are for predominantly girls, for when you're talking about those ages of 13 to 17 today. We do take non-binary girls in that home as well. And we also have instances where we've had boys in our homes where there's a family room. So someone who's with their mom or with their dad. There
Got
really is
it.
a need for boys, though. So I will advocate for that. I know that there's some other agencies like Ruby's Place that have opened up homes for boys, and I think it's really, really important that we continue to see more of that.
Yes, thank you. All right, Tiffany. So you're now, since you have been a guest on our show before, and at that time, you were not the head of the juvenile branch. So you've been promoted. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me, what does that mean? What do you do with the juvenile branch?
So this is a new position for me. This is my second week. But what I have been empowered to do is to ensure that our youth are don't recidivate, and that we do that by providing appropriate resources and referrals to assist them to remain out of the delinquency system. And so I manage a small group of lawyers and staff um, at the Juvenile Justice Center, and we are motivated to um, make sure that our youth leave the system stronger with tools to stay out of the delinquency system.
Great, thank you. So important work. And so thank you for what you do because I know you personally and I know that you are really, really there because you have a heart for the kids and you want them to succeed. So I'm so happy that you're in this position. So tonight we're talking about sex trafficking, and when we were doing research, we saw human trafficking, and we saw sex trafficking, and we saw labor. What is the difference between all of these types of trafficking?
So I think human trafficking is going to be your umbrella term. And underneath that umbrella term, you have different types of human trafficking. And human trafficking is basically where someone profits by using the free labor or using an individual's body to sell sex. And someone profits by that activity. And under that umbrella of human trafficking, you're going to have labor trafficking, which is individuals whose you know sweat and everyday labor. It could be a nail salon, it could be a restaurant, um, it can be farm workers, where their labor is being used to make profit, and they're not able to leave their captive. And usually they remain in those positions through force or fear of some type. And sex trafficking would obviously be someone profiting from an individual who is using sex acts. And they, as well, are either they're kept in that by using force or fear. Is a dynamic that is established with the person who is being trafficked. Oftentimes, we see it especially with sex trafficking of young girls, called a trauma bond.
Mm.
And so at some point, because of that trauma bond that is developed between the person being trafficked and their trafficker, there no longer needs to be any force or fear to keep that person working for them. They have been basically brainwashed into thinking that this trafficker is who they need, and that the trafficker loves them and is the only person who will provide for them. And so there are times when um, people may see a individual who's being trafficked, who does not try to leave their trafficker. And that is because of a trauma bond that has been established.
I'm so glad you said that because I have heard, so often where people say, well, the girls don't try to leave. Why don't they try to escape? So they must like doing it. They must like being there. That must be their choice. Um, but so I'm glad that you talked about this trauma bond because I think that unless you've been in that situation or work with these girls, that doesn't become immediately clear that it's not a choice, but it is something that happens, kind of almost a break, basically, that happens in their minds as they are being exploited.
Yes.
Um, Vanessa, I know that in the work that you do, a lot of the girls um, that are trafficked were some of them were kidnapped, right? Some of them were lured. Can you talk a little bit about how the luring process occurs?
Yeah. So, I love that Tiffany brought up trauma bonding because really the battlefield is the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the people that are groomed and that are recruited into human trafficking are uh, it happens by way of coercion and preying upon people's vulnerabilities. These stories of Taken, that you see in the news they usually or in movies, they usually aren't the way that people are brought into the life, although that does happen, and we're seeing that at a pretty high rate now. And there's some reasons for that, which we can talk about later. But the whole point of the grooming piece, I think, is looking for, what things that you can prey upon. Is somebody needs shoes? Does somebody need food? Do they need housing? Do they need a friend? Do they need love? Do they need to be told they matter? Maybe they're going through, feeling like I'm too fat, too skinny, too tall, too short. I've got pimples. I'm going through puberty. All the things that made all of us feel insecure, unfortunately, are free game in this market of exploitation. And I'll just say that social media has really greased the skids around really debilitating our psychological health and making us easy prey, because we're constantly being fed these messages about not being a good enough and needing that serotonin hit of, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? And so now that I'm trained, if somebody would just tell me they like me and jump into my DMs or text me or see me on the corner and say, I like you. I like you. I like you. I like what I see. I like what I'm hearing. And that's all we need. We're all wired now to be responsive to that. And it's a great hook, unfortunately, into a terrible, terrible outcome.
Yeah, and I think, when we were looking at some of the statistics and we were looking at, who are the victims, right? And we saw that 1 in 4 victims of human trafficking are children. So
Mm-hmm.
these are kids, and it's easy to, we all know it's easy to manipulate a child, right? How many times have we said, well, I'll read this story, but that means that you have to go do this. And it's so easy to get them to go along with it because you're the adult, you're smarter, you're wiser, you're slicker. And these kids are the ones that are being victimized out there. Another statistic I saw were that women and girls are disproportionately affected by forced labor, and they're almost 99% of victims in the sex industry. And I know that that's probably changing a little bit now. We're seeing more young men, more boys being involved. But how big of a problem is sex trafficking here in Alameda County?
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, unfortunately. And I think that the percentage of young people who are being trafficked, 67% are African American girls. And I think it's higher here in Alameda County.
Mm-hmm.
And all you need to do is go down on East 14th / International, and there are certain spots where you will see young girls who are being trafficked. And I know the tendency is for older folks who are not aware of the vulnerabilities that have been used and manipulated to get the girls out there. You think, as Vanessa said, these are just some fast little girls out there. But when you dig deeper, what you find is that the majority of these girls are from the foster care system. Um, they come from very impoverished families. They may have absent parents or guardians. And someone told them I'm going to be your boyfriend. You're beautiful. And that's how it starts out. But it is a huge problem. And it's a huge problem for our girls here in Alameda County. And that's why we need to be concerned.
Yeah. Vanessa, do you want to answer that question as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we in Alameda County, the stat that Tiffany shared is so alarming. 15% as well are Latinx, right? So um, talk about disproportionality, right? You're talking about 13% of our population is Black. and, and 20 some odd, 25, 26, depending on the day, are Latinx. And there's this disproportionality of it being what, 80+% of those that are trafficked, youth that are trafficked are, these two, Black, Indigenous, people of color. It's alarming. And when we look at the, I always say to people, because there's a lot of narratives out there that, oh well, the reason why the numbers look like that is because maybe we're picking on those populations, and they're the only ones that we're going to find out about. Maybe they're the only ones that we're asking about. Well, no, the reason why that's happening is because those are the ones that are most impoverished. Those are the ones that don't have access to the best quality schools. Those are the ones that have housing issues and food scarcity. Those are the ones that are dealing with generational mental illness and generational addiction. And so until we start getting to the root causes of what makes Black and brown girls vulnerable, and hurt, what really is showing up as Black pain, and then we're going to continue to see that population preyed upon. And these things are just one of many reasons why I'm very concerned about a lot of narratives out there that want us to be, want us to open things up. Let's open everything up. Let's make everything permissible. When we have such vulnerable populations that have not been cared for forever and a day,
Mm-hmm.
still waiting to get the care that they need so that they can make choices, and informed, meaningful, consensual choices, not these sort of predatory choices that say this is the only option that is available to you. You want to make some money? Here, I got an option for you. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. And our people are the ones that are being piloted in this really scary scientific experiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, California has consistently had the highest number of human trafficking incidents reported in the United States. So, I'm making this point because I know that we're talking here about Alameda County and the problem in Alameda County, but it's not just Alameda County, right? It is statewide, it is countrywide, a problem of human and sex trafficking. But both of you were saying something very profound about the victim. And I think whenever we think about the victim being these young children, we think about the language that we're using, right? If we're calling them prostitutes, if we're calling the perpetrators of who are buying these young girls and young boys, we're calling them Johns, right? But the language that we use is also really important, right? To discuss and try to um, get people to understand that this is not choice, right? Like children that are being quote unquote prostitutes are being raped. They're children, not on their own out there deciding to make these choices for themselves. And Tiffany, being in the field of law and doing what you do, language matters, right?
Absolutely. And I try to encourage people to use the correct language because young girls are not prostitutes. They are victims of trafficking, they're victims of rape, and they should be referred to and treated as such. It's very interesting to me how the legal system seems to carve out an exception for when a purchaser has sex with a young girl, and they're called Johns, which seems very harmless. Seems like something that is not very damaging. But when they purchase young girls, no one really wants to talk about the fact that this is actually rape,
Mm-hmm.
and that they should be charged with lewd acts with a child, they should be charged with having sex with a minor, with rape. And it's not something that is this lighthearted, harmless activity between two individuals who choose to have a transaction with one another. I don't like the term John. I think that we should call them what it is, which is when it comes to children, they are rapists.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And we should use the correct language and we should treat them as rapists.
Hmm.
Because when they are purchasing young girls, there is no doubt in my mind that they know that these are children
Hmm.
because people can see that they are children. No matter how much makeup they may have, or how tall their shoes are, or how skimpy their clothes are, these are kids, these are children.
Hmm.
And they are seeking these children.
Hmm.
They're not seeking adults. And so it is important that we frame it correctly, and that we treat the participants as they are, which is victims, victims of trafficking, victims of rape, and rapists.
Hmm.
That's my humble opinion.
Well, we take it because your opinion is a big deal, because you're working on that part of the system. Um, but Vanessa, you shared with me some statistics, guys, like right in line with what Tiffany is talking about with seeking children and seeking young girls and seeking out, these rapists seeking black women in particular. And you shared some statistics with me. I wanted to put that up so people can see, because I think it's important for us to talk about that. So while we're getting that slide and that information ready, Vanessa, can you talk a little bit about some of the statistics that you know around, what these rapists are looking for and why?
Yeah, so I wanted to just point out a few things. So one is there is a bill that has been introduced to kind of address kind of the elephant in the room, right? SB 673, Senator Bradford introduced the Ebony Alert, and I believe we're going to talk some more about that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's because of missing Black children and women that are going unnoticed, and it's all tied to this whole kind of language issue, and this notion that and actually there's been studies that show that there's this perception that Black girls have they're more adultified. They make their own decisions. They're more rebellious. They are not they're runaways. They're not small children or young children or impressionable children that still have their prefrontal cortex developing, that need intervention and care and love. There are these sort of almost made into these personas that deserve this, that that you shouldn't have been out there being fast or whatever else the narrative is, or you wore that outfit, and so you must have known that this was going to happen. And so there's this blaming, this blame culture, and this dismissiveness when we go missing, when we are being kidnapped, when we I really dislike this whole notion of when Black girls come back, after they've been gone for a weekend or a week. They come, we come back and we say found safe. I needed to say found raped, found
Mm,
choked, found beaten.
mm,
That's what we need. It's hard to hear. This is so hard, guys. This is, but we got to keep it real, because if this was someone else's child, we would be saying that. We would be real about it. We wouldn't say found safe. But
mm,
because it's children that we've learned how to create a narrative around them, that they're not really children, or they're not really tender, they're not really our babies. We really need to take back the innocence of our our Black girls and our brown girls and recognize this hurts them. They bleed blood just the way we all do. And they need us to see that when they're missing, we need to have a sense of urgency to go find them. We need to care about their parents, how that are suffering. Yes, their parent, one of their parents may be drug addicted. Maybe one of their parents may have 5 jobs and they're out working a million hours and they're not at home. Doesn't mean they don't love their child. It's time that we've got to rearrange this narrative that is allowing us to get comfortable in our homes and just kind of dismiss when they're missing or dismiss when they've been harmed. And calling, the prostitute. Prostitution is a penal code. It is it's a criminal it's a terminology that is used in the penal code. And SB 1322 was passed years ago that says a child cannot be a prostitute. Why? Because they're a victim. They're not a criminal.
Wow. Y'all are preaching tonight. I am preaching. I mean, I'm telling you, this is such good information to just change our way of thinking, right? Because if we don't change the way we think and look at this issue, it's going to continue to just get worse. And we're going to continue to blame the victim, which we do so often when women are the victims of crime. We change it to make the victim the problem versus the perpetrator. And so thank you to both of you for really making it very clear that the child is the victim and the perpetrator needs to be prosecuted to the highest extent possible. I want to talk about the Ebony Alert that you mentioned, Vanessa, because I thought this was such a great idea. And I understand that it's logistically going to be difficult, but I do think that we're on to something to think about. How do we make when Black and brown girls go missing just as important as when white girls go missing, right? We saw in the news, we see them all the time. They're missing. It's a national story. It's a worldwide story. It's a search. But when our Black girls go missing, it's barely a neighborhood search. So Senator Stephen Bradford, if you can put this slide up, Senator Stephen Bradford is introducing this SB 673 Ebony Alert, where, because as we've already mentioned here, nearly 40% of those who are missing are people of color, girls and boys of color. And Black children make up 38% of all missing child cases and 53% of child rape. He's called it, quote unquote, juvenile prostitution. But we just heard that our children are not prostitutes, they are being raped. And so the Ebony Alert will go out just like an Amber Alert whenever a Black or brown child is labeled as kidnapped or missing. Well, kidnapped, right? When they're labeled as kidnapped, this alert would go out. And as I was reading this alert, one of the things that caught my attention was that the difference between categorizing someone as missing versus kidnapped, and the difference in the way in which our police officers are allowed to respond, right? So first, let me just get your thoughts in general about this idea of an Ebony Alert. What are your thoughts about that, Tiffany?
I think, I was talking with an Oakland City Councilwoman, Treva Reed, about this because I had heard some of my friends actually made a comment that they thought that if the Ebony Alert were put out, that people would ignore it because they would know that it meant that a Black girl went missing. And so they should just ignore it. And when I talked to Councilwoman Reed about this, she says, we need to make sure the alert goes out so that we know that one of ours is missing. and not just missing, but probably under um, violent or forced or coerced means, and that we need to then rally up to try to get our baby back. And I agree with her. And so I support the bill, and I hope that it passes.
Great. Vanessa?
Yeah, I think, the the question is just it encapsulates the very issue that we have. It's like, do I say that they're black? Because then what kind of behavior will that drive? And
Mm-hmm.
so the question is, you know, I think what it will do, and I hope what it'll do is we will begin to see how desensitized we are
Mm.
as a people. When we see it on the screen and we ignore it, we will begin to see this is something that I've accepted as status quo. And furthermore, where will the child go? What made that child vulnerable to begin with, and who's going to solve that gap? Who's going to get in there and I mean, because it's going to be popping up. I'm telling you, I'm getting alerted about it all the time, and it's actually interesting because we've had this 10 kidnappings that were and attempted kidnappings that were reported by various 27 different agencies in the city of Oakland, and we've been coming together to talk about that as of late. And after we started talking about that, a couple of people started bringing their missing flyers in and saying, and she's missing, and she's missing,
Mm.
and what we realized is a lot of us are immobilized because
Mm.
we're going, I don't know what to do. I
Yeah.
don't know, how do I respond to this? And if it's coming after you at you one after the other, does apathy set in? How do you deal with that emotionally, knowing that so many of us are missing, and why we're missing, and what's happening to us, and then what's going to happen when we get back home? It's just it'll point out something that we already know,
Mm-hmm.
but we probably haven't come to terms with just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true because what we're seeing is sort of the after effects, right? We're seeing the statistics that come a year or months after all of these occurrences they've happened. But what when we see as we're driving down the freeway and we see an ebony alert and we're seeing it over and over and over again, is that going to make us rise up to act? Or like you're saying, is that going to make us, well, there's just another one? Um, so around this thought about missing versus kidnapped, I reached out to a law enforcement officer and asked that question: what makes you kidnapped versus what makes you missing? Because if you're labeled as missing, it means that you can potentially be a runaway. Versus if
Mhm.
you're labeled as kidnapped, then you would get the ebony alert. And the officer told me that um, it really depends on the sort of the background of the child, the what the child is known for. As the child gone missing before, then that means that if they're nowhere to be found again, they're more likely to be considered runaways versus actually being kidnapped. And in my mind, as I'm listening to you all today, and I'm thinking about that pattern, that is like a pattern of being groomed, right? You're gone for a day, then you come back home, and maybe you're gone for 2 or 3 days, then you come back home, and now you have a pattern of being gone. So then when you're gone a week when you're gone 3 or 4 days, nobody really says anything because this is your pattern,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
also,
yeah,
when you think about grooming, which is the appropriate word, Dr. Donna, kudos
I
to
learned that
you.
from you. I learned that from you.
You think about when you have a young person who's being groomed by her boyfriend, right?
Hmm.
And so when a parent or guardian contacts law enforcement about their missing child and the possibility that she might be with a boyfriend who's an adult.
Mm,
Well, why isn't that automatically labeled kidnapping?
mm,
Mhm.
Because no adult man should be with a young girl and there's not any consent from a parent or guardian,
right.
and missing and not in school, or being where she's supposed to be. That is kidnapping, in
Mm,
my opinion.
mm-hmm.
And it should be labeled kidnapping. But you're right. After so many, runaways with the adult man,
Mm-hmm.
now they're labeled missing and not kidnapped.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
and if you think about that, I mean, what a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The child runs away to be with the Romeo pimp one day, one night, 2 nights. Now, let me break that down for you. In that one day or 2 days, they may have been, maybe the first night, it's a night of bliss with the boyfriend. We're going to eat, we're going to get a new purse, we're going to get our nails done. It's all love and joy. And they come back, and then the next time it's time to pay. It's time to pay off all that fun stuff we did on Friday. And now you're going to be subjected to having sex with 9 to 21 people a
Mm,
day in a street corner, having, being with 80-year-old men, 70-year-old men, people that smell,
mm,
people that, just have no regard for you at all. It's not pretty women. It's not this beautiful scenic thing that, that TV has made it out to be. It's a horrible experience. And then you send that child back home, that 13-year-old, that 16-year-old, you send them back home to their mom that's already struggling as it was.
mm,
And you say, here she is. I gave her back to you. Well, now, what kind of resource has been given to that family? Because that's just a runaway. There's no mental
mm-hmm.
health resource that's been allocated. There's no case management. There's no, and that child has been thoroughly traumatized from one day of that. How many of us could handle 1 hour of it? Not one of us. And be able to just brush it off and move on, go back to school, everything's good? No. So this is what the missed opportunity is: early intervention. We should be getting in there right when that first incident happens. Someone should get in there and find out what's going on. How can I help you? How can I support you so this doesn't happen again? Because by the time we're getting involved, I call it being thrashed. These poor babies have been thrashed for 6, 8, 12 months. They're indoctrinated. They're living in hotels. They ain't been home for months. And now we get involved. It's
Mm.
too late. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not too late. It's never too late. But I don't want them to suffer for all that time. And I'm sure nobody else does. It's just, we've got to, we got to care more about the quality of life of each and every one of these children.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, as because in my profession, we so I work for the county insurance company. And I'm thinking, as you're thinking about case management, I'm thinking about the programs that we have in place, and we're just not equipped to do that.
Mm-mm.
There's no part of the healthcare system that is equipped to deal with a young girl who has gone missing for 1 or 2 days and now is back home. And so the people like that are around that child, the community, the village, we're the ones that are going to have to step in. And so, like you mentioned, Vanessa, 27 different community based organizations have come together to really speak out and declare a state of emergency around this issue in our community. Um, the mayor has listened. The mayor has not made a state of emergency, but has created a task force, right? That is going to be comprised of, girls who were victimized, of community-based organization and other leaders to kind of come together and figure out how to fill that gap. But in the meantime, what's left is us, the people in the community. What do you think the people in the community can do? How can we help? And that's
Well,
for either of you to start.
yeah, I'll just share a few ways. So, this group of 27 agencies came together and said, we each have our charter, but we want to be proactive about keeping girls safe. And so we collaborated. Nola Brantley Speaks compiled this flyer that gave tips for adults and parents, and tips for kids, and things like um, turn on your emergency SOS on your iPhone, or allow your parents or someone you trust to know where you're at, digitally. Things like, don't be on your phone when you're walking around, or don't necessarily believe that someone is who they say they are online until you can prove it, and don't meet people alone, things like that. And so this flyer we've copied it and we've distributed it, a group of us. So we've got Realize Potential Inc., and we've got Boss and Adamika Village, and just so many great organizations have come together. And we're doing a community outreach every Friday evening now. And we start off at 4:30 in the afternoon. Every Friday evening, we're starting off. And then we're doing prayer for those who want to pray. The rest of the outreach comes in with the outreach and safety training at 5 o'clock. And we are going around to different places in the city and handing out these flyers and making sure that people know, in particular our Black girls, our brown girls, these girls that are so vulnerable to this, that they're loved, that they're thought of, that they're important to us. And so we welcome everybody to come out, be a part of this, get a copy of the flyer. It's not super high tech, it's super grassroots, but it's doing the job. And EOYDC is involved in this. So Serena over there, there's just so many great hands in this, saying, together we're going to express first that we see you, we care about you, we want you safe. Secondly, we're going to make sure that all the different folks, whether it's the mayor's task force, or whether it's Alameda County's public health violence prevention connection that is happening at the county level, wherever it is, gender-based violence, all those groups contributing to the safety of the people that are at most high risk, and that is Black and brown girls.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad that you talked about that, and I'm hoping to have Miss Brantley on the show next week to really talk about her efforts and what she's doing. But we will have this flyer that you just mentioned, which has tips for the young girls and tips for parents. We'll have it posted on all of our social media pages. It's also going to be in the description of this show. And we are participating in helping to distribute this flyer. We've distributed to our partner organizations here in West Oakland, which is where we will be on Friday. Friday will be in West Oakland.
Yes.
So we will be here helping to get the word out and walking on the streets. Someone asked me, because they knew that this topic was coming up today, and someone asked me, well, what if I see a young girl or young boy who I think is being trafficked, and what do I do? How do I reach out? How do I help them? Should I say something in the moment? Do I wait and call the police? Like, Tiffany, what do you suggest for someone who thinks that they are seeing someone, or maybe they even get a signal from the girl or the young boy that, hey, I need some help? What's the best way to help in that type of situation?
Call the police. I have to say, call the police. You don't want to get involved because If a trafficker thinks you're getting in the way of their money, they will make sure that you don't get in the way of their
Mm,
money. And so the best thing to do is to go to a place of safety, call the police, make sure you have descriptions and locations. You don't want to scare them away because you want the police to get there and get the perpetrator. So call the police is what I would say.
great. Thank you. Well, this has been phenomenal. I'm looking at the chat. This is live, and I encourage you all, if you have questions for either Vanessa or Tiffany, to please put them in the chat. Um, I did see one question about the age. Does the age matter in terms of missing versus kidnapping?
Yeah, I've seen that most of the time when you have someone who's like 10 and below, then you're going to see that labeled as kidnapping. Above that, I don't know if there's a legal designation, but what I've seen just, actually happening is that when you're getting to about 11 and above, then the officers start to look at behaviors, right? Have they done this before? Who are they spending time with? And then it's this question of, do they want this or not, right? And again, it goes back to that narrative of, can children can't consent. So what does that mean? Do they want this?
Mm-hmm.
And where is this narrative coming from that bucketizes things into a they want this, they're a runaway, they're a problem, and we're just gonna let them just get it out their system, be out for a couple of days. That has to be relooked at, because that's the wrong message. These are children. They don't want this.
So we talked a little bit about social media and parents. What tips or suggestions, recommendations do you have for parents who have, young boys or girls in their households around social media? What are your tips, or any tips or recommendations that you have for parents?
Yeah, I would just recommend that you spend some time talking about their behaviors on social media. So there's some really great documentaries, and that really demonstrate that the way social media is designed is to get you addicted, and it's purposeful. I mean, there's a lot of psychological science in making you want to stay in these environments and scrolling and looking for attention. And then there's so much, I think there was 700% increase in recruiting and grooming on social media during COVID, 700% increase. And so we want to not think that we can isolate our children from that, because that's not going to work. But let's open up the dialogue. Let's talk about what it is. What do you like about that person? About having thousands of followers that you don't know who the people are. How do you feel about the fact that probably a good portion of your followers may be, men over 50 that are just looking at your photos? How do you feel about the fact that, people, because I did a class in Hayward, at a middle school, and I asked a group of 30 girls, how many of you have been solicited in your inbox, DM'd, and offered money? Do you want to make some quick money in your DMs? And 19 of the girls said they raised their hand. And this was for a Black Student Union event. So here we have these behaviors that are happening, and we want to equip our young people to know how to react when they see that. Maybe the one other thing is, do you have a private account or a public account? If you have a public account, why do you have that? Are you marketing a product? Are you trying to create a network for purposes of selling something? And that's usually why you have public accounts, right? Because you're trying to get this wide network. If you're getting it for attention, then you have a child that needs more attention, needs more care, needs more conversation. and needs more, validation. And it's not, doesn't say anything about you as a parent. Some kids just need more. So how can we bring more in? Maybe it's more counseling, maybe it's activities, maybe it's social groups, but they need more attention, and they're going to go find it, unfortunately, in someone who is willing to prey upon that vulnerability if they don't get it at home.
Thank you, Vanessa. That's great. Tiffany, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, everything that Vanessa said is, I echo those sentiments. You know, we can only try to prevent our children from um, being on social media until a certain age,
Mhm.
really. And I've tried, and it becomes a really serious point of contention. And so we do have to educate our kids. And you know, I would like to assure that the accounts are private, because again, why do you need to have a public account?
Mhm.
Um, you can share your account with your friends who know you. You don't need to have it open, and having conversations about what that will open up to. Um, for a while, when my daughter first had her phone, I had an app that monitored her activities. Oh boy, was that a problem for me.
Mm.
But I had an app that monitored all her activities on, texting, emails, social media, up until she was at an age where she felt as though, we needed to discuss her privacy rights, which, they have some. But and of course we know we can't police everything that they do, but you need to try. I also I have the parental controls. I would encourage parents to use the parental controls, on who allowing disallowing new contacts to be added. Only the contacts in their phone book that you allow. I had the timer on so that she could only be on certain apps during certain periods of time. It was very stressful. I mean, it's not an easy thing to
Mhm.
do, because there's constantly going to be a pushback, especially when they start to get of that age where they want to push away and they're becoming independent. And so it was not easy, but I mean, it's what we have to do to keep our children safe, and the alternative is not an option.
Hmm. Thank you both for that. Whew, this has been deep, educational, and putting us all, I think, on alert about the the depth of this problem, and more importantly, what we can do as community members to just help to stand in the gap for these young children. And I love that conversation we had about language. I think it's important that we start calling these people who are buying these young girls rapists, and that we push to have, penalties that are more in line with what they actually are. So I thank you both for being here tonight. I appreciate all the knowledge that you have. And I know you only gave us just a little bit of your knowledge, but I really appreciate you both being here. So as we close, is there anything else that you think that we should know that I haven't asked you, that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I just want to just say a few things. If there's anyone that is watching today and is thinking, I'd like to get ahead of this, and I'd like, there's someone in my family or someone in my community that I think is at risk, I just want to encourage you to have just sit down and have a conversation with them about their hopes and their dreams. And, these conversations that oftentimes we think they're not that valuable, but they are. They're anchors for safety for people that are hurting in silence. And so taking the time to have that conversation with someone proactively about what they want and how we can align with their wants is so, so important. And then I also wanted to just plug that I am the chairperson of Violence Prevention Coalition, and we are having a citywide summit, peace summit in Oakland. And that is on June the 24th. And we really want to encourage the community to come out. It's from 10 to 4 p.m. It's going to be at Laney College. And we ask that you would just come and help us identify some like real world tactical solutions to human trafficking, to gun violence, to family and youth violence that is happening in the city of Oakland. Please come out and be a part.
Thank you, Vanessa. We have that flyer. We'll show the flyer and we will make sure it's out on all of our networks and all of my pages so that you people can join in on that Peace Summit. So thank you.
Yeah.
And Tiffany, any last words or last comments?
I just want to reiterate something I said before, which is if you happen to see, a young girl who you suspect to be trafficked, what I'd like people to know is instead of looking down your nose at them and calling them every name except for a child of God, that you think about what got them to that
Mm,
situation and what can you do to help. And so that's, I think, what I really want to change the narrative about who these young girls
mm,
are. How they behave outwardly is not really a reflection of what is going on with them and the complex trauma that they are suffering from. So I think that's my part. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show again.
Thank you. You two really are such blessings to our community. We're so happy, Tiffany, for your promotion that you're now the head of the juvenile courts because what you're
Thank you.
saying, or juvenile, what is it, system?
I'm head of the district attorney's juvenile
Juvenile
branch.
branch. I'm so glad that it's
Yeah.
you because
Mhm.
I know
Thank you.
I'm so glad that it's you. We're blessed to have you in that position. And Vanessa,
Thank
thank you for being a part of the community and what your organization does is so important. I know it's a lifeline to the girls who are trying to come back and be restored into the community. So I thank you for
Absolutely.
being who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
Um, so there's a couple of questions I know in the chat. I just saw them. I'm sorry. So a couple of questions. One is, do you have to wait 48 hours before you declare your child missing? Do you have to go wait before you go to the police?
I would say no.
Okay.
You
That's
should.
me. Right. If it's a
Tell you
minor,
that.
you need to report it as soon as
Yeah.
possible.
Yes. Okay.
Because if they're a trafficker, they could be on their way to the
Mm,
airport or driving down the 5 to go to LA and Fresno.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And within 48 hours, 1/3 of all missing or runaway youth will be solicited for sex. That's a stat that is
Wow.
important. So the time is of the essence, even if they're just hanging out, as we say, or as they say. That this is you've got to, if they're a minor, go right on down and file.
Right. Right. Um, what's the question?
As a grandmother, I am fearful at times when my 13-year-old granddaughter wants to hang out with a friend.
Okay, I see it. So the question is, I think we kind of answer this of that balance between not wanting to be an overbearing parent, grandparent versus letting the child have some freedom. And we've talked about some of the things you can put in place, right, in terms of social media, and apps you can put on their phone so that you know where they are. So some things like that. So it's a balancing act. It's definitely a balancing act. Um, so as always, once we kind of recognize what the problem is, we've talked about the problem, we always have to have some solutions. You've given us some tips to have for parents, but we also know that we need to make political changes. And so I want to encourage you all, as Vanessa mentioned, Councilwoman Treva Reed is bringing this SB blah 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 673 SB 673, that is the Ebony Alert, to Oakland City Council, to be voted on as a resolution. Oh, that was you, Tiffany, that mentioned, both of you I think mentioned it. But Council Member Reed is bringing that as a resolution for at the Oakland City Council meeting on May the 30th. That's next Tuesday at 1 p.m. You can join the Oakland City Council meeting. It's still virtual or in person, so you have an option. But this resolution is going to be brought forward, and it's important for us to be there and to speak out on it. You can ask to be a speaker, and you get 1 minute to say what you want to say. So let's support Councilmember Reed as she brings this resolution forward to the Oakland City Council, and let's all be there and inundate their council meeting with 1 minute of support for this SB 673 resolution here in the city of Oakland. Thank you both again, ladies. Such blessings. Thank you for your time and your expertise. And we're probably going to have to do a part 3 and bring it back and to continue to this conversation, because I don't want this conversation to be one and done or two and done and then we go about our business. But until we have a handle on this issue, we need to continue to talk about it. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of the Generational Health Network. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, folks out there, you know, we always have a food of the month. So just as we continue to leave you this month with Talking with Dr. Donna as our last episode of the month and last episode of the season, we want to talk about our food of the month, which is eggplant. We want to encourage you to get out and try different ways in which you cook the eggplant, high in fiber, high in minerals, high in vitamins. It's really good for you. So try to eat some eggplant as we end our food of the month. All right. Wow. Season 3 final show was a show. I want to thank Tiffany Chaplin and Vanessa Russell for being here again. I want to thank each of you for keeping your appointments every single Thursday and being with us in season 3. And we are looking forward to coming back to season 4 in September. So pay attention. I'm laughing at these graphics. I haven't seen them. They're cute. Pay attention to your children, your youth, your girls and your boys. Make sure you tell them that you love them and make sure that you get them into organizations and activities where they feel empowered, feel loved, and feel valued. Again, if you are not already a subscriber to my YouTube channel, I'd love for you to go to YouTube, subscribe, and then hit that bell icon so that you know when we do go live and we come back in September. And just remember that you are a part of the community, and together we win. Together we win. Thank you so much for being a part of the Generational Health Network, and I will see you in September. Until then, take good care of yourselves, take good care of your families and your friends and your community. And if you're available on Friday in West Oakland, come on out. We'll tell you the location tonight. Oh, I think the location is known. We're going to be at Defirmary Park, 4:30 tomorrow. Defirmary Park, 4:30 tomorrow. Join us for the prayer circle education about how to do street outreach, and then join us on the street as we try to let folks know about what we're doing. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for keeping your appointments. I'll see you in September. Woo! On Talking with Dr. Donna, we focus on 4 pillars of health to help build a generational health network to end the cycle of premature death in the Black community. I created Talking with Dr. Donna as a way to educate as many people as possible and give accurate information from a trusted physician. Go to Talking with Dr. Donna and get accurate information. And then share that information with your family and friends. And if you like what you see, like my channel and subscribe. Remember, every Thursday, keep your appointment with Dr. Donna.